Did you know? Story of Afghanistan giant? Before we start, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe after watching. Thank you. Stephen Quayle spoke of an occurrence, still classified by the U.S. government, in his popular radio show Coast to Coast. The events allegedly happened in 2002 on a desert part of Afghanistan, when a U.S. Army squad went missing. A special ops task force was sent to find out what had happened, and the soldiers walked along a ragged, mountainous trail until arriving at the entrance of a large cave. Pieces of broken U.S. military equipment and gear were scattered all around the clearing. The task force was about to enter the cave to explore its recesses when a 13-feet, red-headed, six-digit, double-toothed humanoid emerged and attacked them. According to the witnesses, the giant pierced one of the soldiers with his long spear, killing him, before the rest of the squad could take him down, shooting at his face for 30 seconds straight. The body of the giant was packed and loaded into a helicopter, and transferred to a secret location in the USA for study. Based on Quayle's story, L.A. Marzulli succeeded in identifying and interviewing one of the members of the task force who actually saw, and shot, the giant of Kandahar, as the event became to be known. The soldier said that his squad, on searching the cave, had come around a gigantic humanoid with a thick red beard and long hair of the same color. Inside the cave there were remains of human bones, leading the military to think that the creature was a cannibal. One of the soldiers was impaled by the weapon the giant wielded, a kind of long spear or lance. During the 30-second shootout it took that long to kill the creature. According to the witness, the USG didn't disclose the event and has no intention to do it in the future, because giants don't match with the way we explain our world. The giant weighed about 500 kilograms as estimated by the C-130 cargo plane team who transported the body from the pickup location to the United States. The witness remembers that one of the pilots noted a terrible stench of musk and dirt exuding from the cadaver, like a man who didn't shower for 10 years. The witness told Marzulli that the odor was more intense than that of a skunk, and close to that of a pile of decomposing corpses. The giant wore a canvas or animal hide to protect his feet, like some sort of moccasins. We searched online and retrieved the original interview. The witness talks details about the encounter with this huge being which had occurred in a remote area near Kandahar, Afghanistan. Marzulli calls the witness the shooter due to his active involvement in the giant's killing, and claims to have interviewed him 3 times on the phone and at different times, to check for any discrepancies in his story. Having found none, eventually he was convinced that the event was real, and decided to meet the military in person. The meeting occurred in an undisclosed location. Coincidentally, on one of his trips to meet with the shooter, Marzulli found out that his driver was a former military who had served in Afghanistan few years later the event he was investigating, and that he knew about it. This new witness, code-named Mr. D, was interviewed by Marzulli in the documentary series Watchers X and said, "When we came back to base we would hear our colleagues talk about a unit that had found and killed a person inside or at the entrance of a cave. At first I didn't think much of it, but then I've heard that that fellow's size was 3 times that of a human being, and that he had more fingers and toes than a normal man, that he had red hair and that a special unit was looking for him." As the documentary rolls on, Marzulli shows an iron tip weighing about 6 kilograms which, if attached to a pole to make a spear, would be difficult to maneuver for a middle-sized man. That tip was found in Michigan and given to an Indian chief of the reservation. But it is the same object that the shooter claims to have seen in the hands of the giant of Kandahar during the attack. The same iron tip that killed his colleague. In the video, the shooter is called Mr. K, and is introduced just as a worker. He confirmed that he was serving in Afghanistan in 2002, and that his unit had been called for a rescuing mission of another unit which had gone missing in a remote area of that country. So remote, he says, that they had to get there via air with a 4 kilometers distance flight. Mr. K's unit is deployed on a crest of a plateau which was marked as one of the checkpoints where the missing unit should have reported his position. Since they left the base, the soldiers were wondering what could have happened to that unit. They thought of an ambush, but that sounded weird because even in that case there is always time to send a message to the base. In this case no stressed call had arrived, no signal had been sent. So this rescue unit is on the ground searching for tracks and, while descending a slope they see a trail. They follow it. After a curve they see the large entrance of a cave surrounded by rocks, which is another weird thing according to Mr. K. He doesn't elaborate on that, though. Several cracked bones are found among the rocks around, but no identification from their observation point was possible. However, together with the bones, shattered pieces of radio communication devices, U.S. military equipment, were clearly visible. The unit's first thought was again for the ambush hypothesis, or the attack of a wild animal. It could be anything at that point. The entrance of the cave had a clearing large enough to host the unit, however the soldiers were standing at a lower level, and a vertical wall of rock separated them from the clearing. The soldiers distanced themselves, assuming the anti-ambush stance, when something leapt out of the cave at a speed that caught the task force by surprise. It was a human being at least 12, most likely 13 feet tall. It was a monster, says Mr. K, red beard, scarlet red long hair covering his shoulders. And Dan, one of the soldiers, runs toward him firing his weapon, and then all of us come back to reality because that scene was surreal. From this moment on is just the military training that saved the squad, and all memories come from pure adrenaline while Dan keeps running against the giant. Another soldier opens fire, soon followed by the shooter. The video reenactment shows how the giant leaps onto the clearing and pierces Dan with its weapon, holding him in midair as the point of the spear goes through the soldier's body. The giant keeps advancing toward the squad. Without any logical reason, each soldier thinks about the same thing. Shoot him in the face. Shoot him in the face. They yell at each other. The unit carried an M4 submachine gun, .308, 7.62 Recon carbine sniper rifle, and .50 BMG Barrett semi-automatic rifle. The sequence of the events dilutes the time frame but, as the witness points out, it all happened in 30 seconds. 30 seconds were still a lot to kill someone. The giant, although hit by several bullets, kept on fighting. Marzulli throws in parts from the George Norrie's popular radio show, Coast to Coast AM, which put on record the testimony of the C-130 USAF pilot who brought the giant's corpse to America. The creature weighs 1,100 pounds and it's between 10 to 15 feet tall. It was killed by multiple gunfire shots, it seems, in a cave in Afghanistan. Before dying, it attacked our men and could have also killed someone. It was a very, very bizarre story. It sounds like the tale of the Nephilim straight from the Bible. And we must assume that the giant must not be alone, it can't be the only one living on this planet. There must be others, somewhere out there. Maybe he had a mate, or children, who knows? It was unfortunate that the giant attacked our soldiers instead of having a peaceful approach. But I guess that such reaction had to do with the territory. In his show, Norrie asks the pilot how many men were in the transport team inside the C-130, and the pilot says 6 men. When he caught sight of the cadaver, whose face was destroyed by the bullets, the pilot noted that the giant had 6 fingers, a height of about 12 feet, and a net weight of about 1,200 pounds. At this point Marzulli goes back to Mr. K's account. He remembers that when it was all done, and the giant lay dead on the ground, they checked Dan but he was already dead. Why this had to happen? The military asked, still in shock. Before leaving the area the 9 line, that is, the request of evacuation and medical assistance, had been already sent, but suddenly the task force receives a new code and a helicopter shows up, rising vertically from the ravine below the clearing. It doesn't arrive from the sky. And discharge some hauling nets. The orders are to secure the giant inside the nets. After that, another, larger helicopter arrives. The Chinook choppers have enough power to fly at a medium altitude, and only the largest crafts can fly over the mountains in that area. It was impossible to move the giant off the ground by hands, it was too big. And had a terrible stench, worse than a skunk, like a cadaver who had remained outside for a while. Says Mr. K. When the helicopter took off with the net hooked up under, the signal that was sent to the headquarters was a large, potentially human creature. How did you feel after that dramatic encounter? Anger, obviously, for my dead companion, but not only that. In their final report the soldiers are ordered to lie, to tweak the order of the events in accordance to what their superiors told them. Marzulli asks Mr. K to describe the giant one more time. It had 6 digits on his hands and feet, and its nails were weird because they had some fungi-like, bulky things on them, and their edges were irregular. The special unit is placed inside the Chinook chopper, and the 2 crafts go back to base for a debriefing. On that occasion the soldiers are ordered to sign a paper in which they committed to not disclosing any details about that event, on top of falsifying the final report. The reason why the shooter decided to break the silence is because he believes that the people have the right to know what is happening on our planet. For as fantastic as this story may sound, this testimony matches with the one Quayle had presented few years back. Marzulli asks Mr. D, the former special ops soldier who had heard about the giant of Kandahar when he was in Afghanistan, whether he believes that the American people, and the people in general, had to have the right to know if there are beings other than humans living on Earth. Mr. D replies without hesitation. My idea is that if things go exactly as the Bible says, they don't want it. If things go against Darwin's evolution, it can't be spoken out. Mr. D stresses how the story of the giant of Kandahar was something that all military knew, and took them as something really happened. When Mr. D went back to the US after his service in Afghanistan ended, he met other military who had served elsewhere. Yet, if I told them about the giant of Kandahar, everyone had heard about it. In the beginning you think it must be a joke, a hoax. But when things start to go down a certain way, when you keep hearing about the story, you realize that it's not a joke. They kept on telling us to point our weapons up high. Normally this means 2 shots in the body and 1 in the head. But they told us to point them always to the head of a man, and then a little higher. And we wondered why they wanted us to shoot above a man's head? Marzulli asks him to confirm the time in which the fight with the giant allegedly happened. It was 2002. Mr. D was serving in Afghanistan in 2005. If one has to make up a story for some unknown reason, why creating a creature identical to the Nephilim as described in the Bible? Why going down the road that the USG avoids in order to keep the people from knowing? Mr. D said that such a fake story wouldn't make any sense. During his active service in Afghanistan he witnessed things that he has never been able to explain, such as lights in the sky during the shooting, and orbs or tennis ball-sized spheres which flew around making strange sounds. The man had similar experiences in Iraq as well near the Hadifa Dam area, when he was on duty in the underground prisons below the dam. He tells how the prisoners kept on screaming about a terrible feeling that haunted the place. Later Mr. D read the Bible and learnt that an angel had been chained in that very place. Hadifa Dam is on the river Euphrates, specifically, in the book of Revelation chapters 914-15. Saying to the 6th angel which had the trumpet, "Loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates." And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the 3rd part of men. Rumors had it that the soldiers detained in the Hadifa Dam prison were scared to death, and all they screamed was that they could hear them. Even the guards drew straws to choose who had to go down there to get them. Nobody wanted to go down there. Back to Afghanistan, Mr. D adds that rumors upon the existence of giants came also from the locals. They talked about cannibal monsters dwelling inside caves. So the soldiers compared those stories to their American Bigfoot. So 3 different witnesses, who don't know one another, Quayle's witness and Marzulli's Mr. K and Mr. D, reported the same event. The giant of Kandahar was a true event. Mr. D had no idea that the shooter aka Mr. K would have been interviewed. The most interesting thing about him is the type of training he was given in case of a fight inside a cave. The background for that training was that the Afghani rebels hid in caves, and that, if a shootout occurred in there, the US military had to point their weapon above the head of an adult male after firing the first bullet at head level.